it's like anything. The challenges I take on, I won't take on a challenge unless there's a 50% chance of failure. Okay, so that's my criteria. If it's something that I've done before, then that's to me not a challenge when it comes to fundraising. So these challenges, the Guinness World Records, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, the 250 marathons, there had to be that 50-50 chance of not doing it. And I think that's really what makes it interesting.
This is Shed Talk. We are honored to have Martin Parnell with us, a truly remarkable individual whose achievements are nothing short of inspirational. Martin has ran an incredible 250 marathons in just 1 year, set 5 Guinness Book World Records endurance events, and summited Mount Kilimanjaro in an astonishing 21 hours, all to raise over $1.3 million for the humanitarian organization Right to Play. Now, but Martin's impact goes far beyond these feats. In 2016, he ran a marathon in Afghanistan to support women and girls, highlighting his commitment to empower others through sport. He's also the author of 3 books, including his latest, The Secret Marathon, Empowering Women and Girls in Afghanistan Through Sport, and he's the executive producer of a documentary by the same name. Martin's story is one of resilience, dedication, and making a difference in the world. Let's dive deep into this incredible journey. And Martin, welcome to Shed Talk.
Wow, Kevin, thank you. That was quite the introduction, and it's just an absolute pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming. And as I was doing the research and getting everything done and reading it, 21 hours?
Mount Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
Yeah, normally it's a 5 to 6 day climb where you go up, you come down, you kind of acclimatize. But this was for a fundraiser. And my friend Lau and Kadori, another friend who are trekkers, they've been up to the top of Kilimanjaro a number of times, said, you know, it has to be special. When you do a fundraiser, you got to catch the imagination. So we looked at it like an ultra run, but very steep. And so we ended up heading up there, the 3 of us, early in the morning. One morning, and made our way from the jungle. That was where the path started. But we slowly went up the different eco atmospheres. As you make your way up, you get to sort of a sort of no plants but cactuses, and you get right up to the snow and so on. Eventually, you reach the top. So we went straight up, and we came down. In total, 37 hours from top to bottom, and I grabbed half an hour sleep on the way down. So
you're climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Now the atmosphere, like obviously altitude, like how did you climatize?
Yeah, we started at 6,000 feet, and the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro is 19,351 feet. And so by the time we reached the 18,000 mark, we're on snow. And you know, I'm walking 6 steps and I'm stopping and breathing for 10. And we slowly made our way up. It's a phenomenal difference in the elevation from where we started to where we finished. And so that was a major challenge.
So when you're going in there and you're going 21 hours, 36 hours, what are you carrying with you?
Very light. So I've done a lot of running, marathons, also ultra running. So I use a hydration pack, 3-liter hydration pack. I have a mix of a product in there that gives protein, but also I have electrolytes. And on the way up, there was some camps where we could get real food. So it was a combination of both. So I'm used to eating and running. I'm okay having bacon sandwiches and, spaghetti and stuff, and then keep going. And so we fed our way, we ate all the way up.
Was there any time that you were kind of scared? Well, not scared.
Yeah, there was a time when it was dark and we were heading up and we got lost. Got lost heading up Mount Kilimanjaro. It had snowed the night before. And we're kind of, my guide, Lau, kind of knew roughly where he was going, but there was a point where I was kind of on a ledge and my friend Kadori was next to me, and I went to pick up my camera and my camera fell over the edge. Now, luckily it just landed a few feet below and Kadori found it, but that last part was pretty wild. It was pretty wild heading to the top.
So when you're at the top, you lose your camera. It supposedly goes over the edge.
Found it again,
Right.
put it back.
How far down was it from there? Like, could it have gone?
Well, it wouldn't have been good.
Wow.
It was, yeah. I mean, in fact, eventually, the way it worked out is we reached the top at 6 in the morning. So from 9 a.m. all the way through to 6 in the morning. But when we reached the top, there was an incredible sunrise. I mean, it was just magical. We got to the top, the three of us, and had a big flag for right to play. And it was just an amazing, in a way, the time was perfect, because if we had gone faster, we would have been there at whenever, midnight or 3 a.m. But the sun was just rising over Kilimanjaro.
Now you do, well, you were mentioning in the introduction here, 250 marathons. Okay.
I did, yes.
Now you did. Now here's where the Mount Kilimanjaro, to train to do that, to get up that in 23 hours, to get up Mount Kilimanjaro, because I'm really going to go back to that, because I want to deep dive that, because
Sure.
how many people, they need to climatize, it takes 4 days to get up there.
Yeah, that's the normal route. And I was advised by a number of doctors that I shouldn't do it that way. But then others said, well, if you could try it, and if you feel there's an issue, come on down. And that's what I said to Lau. I said, if I have a problem, to my guide, that's it, I'm done. I'm not going to push it. And I would come down. So it's like anything. The challenges I take on, I won't take on a challenge unless there's a 50% chance of failure. Okay, so that's my criteria. If it's something that I've done before, then that's to me not a challenge when it comes to fundraising. So these challenges, the Guinness World Records, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, the 250 marathons, there had to be that 50-50 chance of not doing it. And I think that's really what makes it interesting.
So the 250 marathons in a year.
Yeah.
How are you practicing for that? And well, it's not even a practice. You're actually going into it, but for your mind, to get your mind into it.
Yeah, my training was, I only started running at the age of 47. So I'm not a long-term runner. I had no real interest in running, other than at the age of 47, my brother Peter challenged me to a marathon. And when a sibling challenges you, you don't say no. So I realized, gosh, I got to learn to run now. And so I joined a running group in Sudbury, Ontario, had a mentor, Vince, who was terrific, and slowly took me through the 5K, 10K, the half marathon. And then the marathon itself was the Calgary Marathon in 2003. It was my very first marathon at the age of 48. And so my brother Peter and my brother Andrew, we had a bit of a sibling rivalry, and I ran the marathon, which was great. And I found I was hooked. I'm not, like, I consider myself a reverse Olympian. The Olympians are very good at one sport. I'm kind of rubbish at lots of sports. I'm not good at, but I love doing sport. But I found running was something I could really get into. And so I started running more marathons, qualified for Boston. But then I thought, I want to go longer. And I started running ultra races. And I got up to running a 100-mile race. And my training for that was 3 marathons a week in a row. 3, like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'd run a marathon. And I was feeling good. And from that, I just built up my endurance, just built up. And this is late 40s, early 50s, right? My age. It was just fantastic. And that's when I took on this challenge of running all these, 250 marathons in a year, Mount Kilimanjaro, and so on, the other quests, the other challenges.
So when you're looking at this, you're 50 years old, okay? Well, 47. So you're just getting things started and you're doing that.
Yeah.
To have the mindset, so when you're 30, what's the difference between 30?
Well, great question. Okay, so let's take 30. Married, 2 kids. My career was a mining engineer, very busy. Looking after the kids. It's a challenge. That wasn't my mindset to go out and do these personal challenges. There was a lot of things we had to take care of from a family point of view. However, at the age of 46, my wife, Wendy, passed away through cancer, and my world just flipped. And I had the 2 older kids to look after, which, I did. But then I was finding I needed something to fulfill myself. And I wasn't sure what it was. It wasn't the job. And that's when my brother, out of the blue, challenged me to the marathon. I think it was serendipity. I think these things happen sometimes. And I got into running. I found running helped my depression, helped my mental and physical state. And I just just went with it.
So why marathons? Like, I understand that he came in and it said, okay, here it is. It's a therapeutic
Well,
versus say like,
yeah.
and I'm going to go back and just from my own experience and think about like Spartan races. Okay, so it's a marathon versus, and why not just jump right into an ultra?
Well, it was a challenge with my brother, so let's do the marathon. And then I thought, well, I want to go longer, so I did 100K, and then then I did the death race at 125K, and so on, Sinister 7, 150K. And I always wanted to do the 100 miler, which was the Lost Souls in Lethbridge. But what I found was that I didn't realize, but I have this gift of doing long, slow, boring things. I can just keep going and going. I don't listen to music. But I think what I've come to realize is that this has been my meditation. And it's become something that when I'm doing those long runs, generally on my own, just without the music, generally on trails, I find for my peace of mind, for my mental state, it's a tremendously therapeutic. And whether, for anyone who's listening, whether it's running or walking, just get out there, just get out in nature and look at the flowers and look at what's going on and the animals. I just think we have to reconnect with nature. And for me, that's something that in my later life and now is very important to me.
So let's I want to dive into that for a second, because people that are doing workouts, marathons, or just everyday running, they've got their headphones on and they're focused on doing that. How did you get yourself into a state of flux or a state of focus to be able, yes, you're doing this for a long period of time. Was there a hack? And I don't call it a hack, like a life hack. I'm calling it more, how do you get yourself into that frame of mind? Yes, the environment's pretty. Yes, this is great. But is there a hack there?
Yeah. Well, I think for me, there was a turning point. I found that I was loving this long endurance running efforts, and mentally it was calming me down. I felt good physically. I felt good mentally. And really that's as far as it was going. It was something I enjoyed doing, and I found I could give back by doing it. But just over 2 years ago, I had a breakdown. I had a situation that overwhelmed me, and I looked for help. And I saw my doctor, and he pointed me towards a clinical psychologist. And we started talking, about what I was doing and about how things were helping me. And we're getting a bit deeper here, but there's a path I'm on at the moment, which is definitely living in the now, is not to get caught up hugely in the past or even in the future, but living in the moment right now, where we are right at this moment, you and I having this conversation. And so I've been following a bit of a path. There's elements of, Buddhism in it and so on. But it's certainly been a life changer for me. And we talk about meditation. I think a lot of people are doing it. For me personally, I'm not a guy who sits on a cushion and does the meditation. Okay, I'm a guy that needs to get out. And I really feel almost unknowingly, I've been doing this meditation for the last 20 years without really knowing what the hell I was doing. So I don't know, this is kind of new for me. I'm just sharing it with you for the first time. So I'm on a bit of a journey here, and I'm finding it's something that I can embrace. There's no real answer to this, but it's certainly this journey of, we have our bodies and this is what we have, but I think our souls or whatever it is something that that we all have. So let's not judge each other by how we look or whatever. Let's judge each other by what's inside us. Again, a little bit out there, but you asked, and so I just wanted to share that with you. Is that this journey has been going on for 20 years now.
And you know what? And it's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize and look at. And you just mentioned it there, is your inner self. You have to truly love yourself before you love others. And that inward journey of self-peace and where we're at, because I'm totally on board with that, because it's really important as individuals, as humanity, is that we need to feel ourselves inside to truly love ourselves so that we can grow and help others grow. And understanding, we all have problems and issues. We all have guys, girls, and everything, and it's been bottled up for years. And where you've taken your running, and that first time when you call it a mental breakdown, and I'm going to ask some more questions because it's really interesting, because a lot of people have that same thing, is that that time and space in their life where that it's hit that it's great. We have all these great accomplishments. We're all that in a bag of chips, but it's that one time and moment that really changes us.
Well, I think it's helped me reflect. COVID was tough for all of us. It hasn't gone away. Let's be clear. COVID may have gone in terms of, the physical side and so on to a certain degree, but inside mentally, I think we're still, a lot of us are dealing with the effects of COVID. Because in our world, it's very much the current news cycle, the media, it's all instant, likes and so on. But the reality is you have to be living with yourself and how you connect with people. I'm so glad we're doing the podcast face to face. Being on Zoom, there's time to use it, but I think the connection is something we really, really need. And so that's what I've been working on. My journey, as you touched on earlier, was having done all those challenges. I then went to Afghanistan and have made connections with the women and girls over there. And I've maintained that just because of the terrible situation they're in. And I think giving back helps as well. Giving back, I guess what the one saying that I've lived with is, in life, you don't have to do a lot, but you've got to do something. And the question I ask everybody is, well, what's the something you're going to do? I mean, don't just sit there. What's something? It doesn't have to be a huge thing, but make a difference in some way. So that's kind of something I've stuck with all the way along.
So when you went through this first mental breakdown, how did you recognize it?
It was a feeling. It was like an overwhelming feeling inside, and almost like a welling of, how do I handle this? I can't handle this on my own. That's what it was. It was like a physical, almost a sick physical feeling. And I thought, I cannot handle this on my own. And so I got help. And I think that's something we have to do. For heaven's sake, get help. As I say, the world tends to put out a picture of, here's this person or that person, and they're doing so great and everything's wonderful. And some of the stuff is wonderful, but it's not all wonderful. and we've got to do something with it.
And then how do you ask for the first help? And I'm sorry, I'm going to deep
No.
because
Well, the first help was my doctor, because I didn't know where to go. Like, I talked to my, my wife and so on, but the help is the doctor. Go get help. There's help available. You've got to ask for it. And it went from there.
And then you just build off of that and ask
I
questions.
built off of that. I met an individual who I've been working with for 2 years now. And it's more conversations. And we could probably stop. But the thing is, I find the conversations are so beneficial that I think it's really worth doing. So absolutely. I think we all need to keep that in mind of, don't assume anything about anybody. It may look good, things may be, but let's just be empathetic towards each other and see what's going on. I mean, we've headed in we kind of quite the directions here, but I hope that works for you. And
it's interesting because of the pendulum as we go in mental health and the guys are supposed to be strong and we talked about this and then here it is. And I'm not saying the pendulum swing's a bad thing, but all of a sudden it's able to actually, here we are in a podcast to be able to, we're going to be talking about, $1.3 million raised with the girls and we're doing this and this. But actually when it really comes down to it, it's about, you know what, it was hard. And I did have a breakdown and I'm just like everybody else and going through it and it's okay.
Yeah. And I think that's the journey that I've been on, that I think a lot of us are on, and a lot of us are suffering, which I think we can get some help with. And please reach out. Please reach out and help yourself and help others. So important.
Interesting. And that is so true. Now, the greatest challenge that you've had, and you've talked about going through mental anxiety here, mental anxiety, going through that time of your life in there. What was your greatest challenge besides that? And that was very hard, but another challenge. And talking about your books, you're talking, your goal-oriented, your mind, like getting into your mind space.
Yeah, I am very goal-orientated. I speak about goal setting, overcoming obstacles, and achieving outstanding results. And I look for places I can apply that. And recently it's been very much with Afghan women. And that's a group that I'm working with ever since I went to Afghanistan in 2016 to run the marathon. I went back in 2018 again to run the marathon to support women and girls who were being persecuted for running. And the world changed then in August of 2021 when the Taliban took over. took over the country of Afghanistan, and now women are persecuted. It's basically gender apartheid. They can't go to high school. They can't go to university. They can't walk without a chaperone. They can't even speak in public now. It's absolutely ridiculous. So I'm working with a group called Classrooms Without Walls, and we provide education for students in Myanmar, Ukraine, and Afghanistan. So I teach a 12-week course to a group of Afghan women. It's called The Adventures of Marathon Martin and Friends, and it's really the episodes, the 250 marathons, the climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. Each week there's a lesson, and then they have to do a homework, and they're living in Kabul and different places in Afghanistan, and they have to send the assignments back to me. So that's been a really positive thing that I feel I can give a little bit and keep some hope alive for a lot of these women who are over there. There's 20 million women in Afghanistan, women and girls, who are now being persecuted. I mean, by the Taliban with their incredibly strict, ridiculous laws, and it's just, I think the voice. I'm a little bit of a tiny voice, just to kind of keep talking about it, Kevin. So that's one thing that I've worked on. The other is I'm part of Rotary, the organization. I belong to Rotary, and we've just set up a club, a Rotaract club, which the majority is Afghan women. So I can't say the name of the club because of security, but again, it's just something to provide hope. That I can do. And so that's all you can do.
So how do you get involved in something like that?
Well, for me, it was the Afghanistan piece, and that's now been 8 years. I was actually recovering from a clot on the brain. Back in 2015, I had a massive clot on the brain, and I was in Winnipeg to give a keynote speech, and they said, no, we have to take you to hospital. Did a scan, found this massive clot, and so then I was in recovery for over a year. But while I was in recovery, my wife, Sue, gave me an article on the very first marathon of Afghanistan, which was run in Afghanistan in 2015. And I read about it, and there was 60 runners, 10 international, and 50 Afghan men and 1 Afghan woman. And I thought, that's kind of interesting. And her name was Zainab. But when I read her story, she was saying that when she was training, men would yell at her, get off the streets, you're a prostitute, you shouldn't be running. And they'd throw chunks of concrete at her to try and stop her. But she didn't. She went back home and she ran around inside her garden, her walled garden, hours upon hours. And she was the very first Afghan woman to run a marathon. Now, when I read this, I was recovering. I wasn't feeling great, but I said to Sue, if I get better again, if I can run a marathon again, I'm going to go to Afghanistan and support Zainab and the other women. And that's what happened. I found out how to do it. Well, because I realized there was 10 international runners who had been the first year. So I realized, okay, there are international runners who are running. I just found out that an organization called Untamed Borders was organizing it. And I contacted the owner and said, I'm interested. And it all went from there. It kind of snowballed. And then I was in Afghanistan in 2016 running a marathon in the foothills of the Hindu Kush Mountains. I mean, it was unbelievable.
So, okay. So you got a blood clot. And I'm going, you get a blood clot. Yeah. You're reading this article. It motivates you, inspires you, gets you in a mindset of there's your 50%. Okay.
Yeah.
Like 50% you might not
I want to
make
help
it.
here. I was.
But how do you know, like you have, and you're on the speaking tour right now, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And what was your speaking tour about?
Well, it was about running the 250 marathons. So it was kind of my previous life of, running 250 marathons, the Guinness World Records, that whole, ordinary to extraordinary type of talk that I was giving at that point.
And then you get a blood clot.
I get a blood clot. And they don't know where it came from. That's okay. So the question I've been asked is, did it come from when you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro? And you did it? No. So there's this particular type of blood clot is the sort of 1 in a million type of thing. Generally with women, not men, but it does happen in men, but no idea where it came from.
No idea whatsoever.
No idea.
So you get a blood clot, you're talking this, there you go. How long were you out for?
So I was in an induced coma for 24 hours, and then I was in hospital. My wife flew in. I mean, she, the whole thing was terrible. And I get put on this concoction of medication to try and ease off the blood clot. Anyway, I went home after 2 weeks from Winnipeg back to Calgary and Cochrane. And then I'm just basically sitting on my couch, just sleeping 18 hours a day. I'm on these drugs. I'm eating soup. it was quite a long recovery. I got walking within 3 months and then got running within 6 months. And so the blood clot, they didn't operate. It just disappeared. It just dissipated with the drugs and so on. So
Wow. And then, okay, so now you get rid of that, the blood clot.
Yeah.
Okay. You're under recovery. You're
recovery,
going for your first run.
Well, first, let's talk about first walk. So
Yeah.
Sue takes me out, and I've got my walking canes, my sticks, and I basically walk down to the post box and walk back. So do that a couple times, and then over the weeks build up 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers, to where we've eventually built up to 8 kilometers of walking. And then I started running, run 1 minute, walk 4, and built up from there. So it's like building, the building blocks of a house or whatever, slowly building up. And my first race was in Calgary, the Dash of Doom. It was a fancy dress, and I dressed up as Captain Clotbuster.
Oh, Clotbuster. Yeah.
So I had this ridiculous outfit on, and it was fun, and it was good, and it was needed. Yeah.
And it's interesting because here you are, you get the blood clot, you're going for a walk, and you're starting your walk.
Started my walk.
And then how many people out there, and you look at people and our listeners and stuff like that all of a sudden at that particular time, you know what? I'm not going to do this. I can't do this anymore. I give up. And then that's it.
It's all about the first step, Kevin. The first step's the key. I started walking. Interestingly enough, I also signed up for the Calgary Marathon. Now, normally I do a marathon. This time I did the 5K walk. So here I am normally on the marathon. No, this time a group of us, and I did the 5K walk. And actually I crossed the finish line with a young girl named Clarissa, who was 4. And we were holding hands, and we were going to cross the line together. But 50 meters to go, she ran ahead and beat me. So there's a lesson there. Don't trust children. I mean, but it was great. It was just all part of the process. And I was just so happy to be out and doing something.
And so it's interesting. You're at the Calgary Marathon. And I like to recap because it really makes me think about it, because it's interesting. So here you are. You're doing a 5K, holding a child's hand, going across there, and then people are going in, and people are talking about their very first marathon, their very first run, and you get to see the joy and the feeling in their face, and then you think of yourself, and you just go, yeah, I did 250,
and here we are. Here we are doing a 5K walk, and it's all part of the journey. I mean, it's like snakes and ladders. You go up the ladder and get knocked down the snake. And I think the key is, if you can, come back as best you can. You just got to come back and okay, what can I do? That's the question. Not what I can't do, what can I do?
And so the 3 books you've written, the talks that you do, what are you doing today? Like, you're talking about living in the moment, living in the now.
Yeah, well, let's talk about today. This morning, I had a great conversation with the owner of a film company in the States, Beth Murphy, Principal Pictures. And Beth has done a lot of work with Afghan women. And she is currently working with a group of Afghan women who they were part of the robotics team, women from Afghanistan, who are now come over to North America and are trying to, with visas and just trying to get things organized. So, I had a great chat with Beth. Tomorrow, I'm giving lesson number 10 of the Adventures of Marathon Martin to a group of 15 Afghan women. And then in the afternoon, I'm going for a walk with my buddy Kurt, who's a Rotarian, and we'll talk all about Rotary things. So, and then Sue and I will probably do something, tomorrow night. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, it's pretty interesting, and I love it. I think one of the key things for your show is curiosity. Mm-hmm. Love it. I mean, to me, that's it's out there, and try and find something that you're curious about, and then talk to people and see what you can do with it.
And the things that you don't know, because it's all about asking yourself a better question, asking yourself things that you don't know, and then listening to your talk right now, and then from basically where you came from the mental health, and then looking at it is one of those things that it happens with everybody.
It happens with everybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care how high you up in some kind of status or whatever. We're all just human underneath, and we got to help each other. And in this day and age, the more we do that, the better, because there's some terrible things going on, and we better be good to each other, because it can be overwhelming. It can be too much.
That is absolutely wonderful. Is there any last word you want to say, or anything that you'd want to just put out there to everybody and about you and about your books or about anything?
I just want to say, go on your own journey. I think we can, as you say, talk about people who have done this and that, and inspiration's great, but do look for your first step. What's your first step? And you may have taken it. Well, take it again. I think be aware. I think I heard a saying, and I honestly can't remember who said this, but pay attention. Okay, pay attention. Observe it, and then share it. So I think if we pay attention, it's out there, and we can make things happen.
That is awesome. You know what, Martin? Thank you very much for coming on Shed Talk.
It's my pleasure. And we're here in the moment. This is just such fun. And I think we did talk about my potential podcast, didn't we, earlier? What I might do. So this is the Shed podcast.
Right, yes.
I'm thinking maybe a hot tub podcast. What do you think, Kevin?
Well, anything's possible.
You'd be the first guest.
I'm totally it. I am totally it. I was just thinking
you'd be the first guest.
Yeah, I'd have to be very cautious on how I would do that. How would I do that? The electrical voice.
We've got to be electrical stuff you got to watch for sure. So.
You know what? We just had one of our greatest podcast guests on here, Martin Parnell. And you know what? We've always asked our listeners, send in a question and I'll answer them. But you know what? We want to be a little bit more spontaneous. So today we're going to be asking Martin, fill the hopper. Ask the questions away.
Okay, well, I'm going to kick off with this one, Kevin. And, thank you for having me today. It was amazing. My question is, as a business person, what is your role personally on giving back to the community, both locally or internationally?
That's a really good question. Has to make me think about it. One of the things about giving back, and that's one of what we call as a non-negotiable. So any business owner out there, one of the things is you should have a non-negotiable. So example, I live in the Calgary area. What are we doing to give back to Calgary? And the biggest thing is that we have to give back into sport, mental health, and basically into the fitness aspect. Because if I'm not looking after our employees in health, wealth, and mindset, how am I going to have a team around me as a business owner to be able to give back into the community? We in our payroll, our deductions and government funding that we have to put out there, we've got to make sure that we're looking after ourselves. So in example, healthcare. Let's talk about our employees being healthy. Well, if our employees aren't healthy, they're going to be taking time off. If we're not putting back and doing charitable events or anything like that, people won't see that, and we won't be a part of the community. It's really important that we entrench ourselves in humanity to look after others and to make sure that we're growing with others as well, because we can't be self-serving. Now, I am a business owner, okay? I am self-serving. Let's talk. Profit is not a dirty word, okay? We have to make money to give back money. So a lot of people say, well, no, give back and then do this. Well, remember, we have to be profitable so that we can give back to the community, so that community helps us grow as well. And I find that that's one of the most important things. Profit is not a dirty word, but make sure we give it back.
Well, can I add something?
Sure.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to say, I think you're exactly right. And I think as part of business, a successful business, it's imperative that you give back in terms of your employees or different groups, because really that is so key to being successful.
You are 100% right. Thank you.
Now you know. Shed Talk.